Genghis Khan sent caravans with gifts for peace to Sultan Muhammad Khwarezmshah, but conflicts arose due to misunderstandings. The Mongols, facing hunger, sought supplies from Iran, but violent responses from the Khwarezmshahs ensued. The Mongols besieged and conquered cities like Otrar, Ujand, Bukhara, and Samarkand. Despite resistance, the Mongols prevailed, decimating populations, and chasing Sultan Muhammad, who later met his demise. Genghis Khan continued his conquests, targeting Gorgan and using ruthless tactics to conquer cities in the region. In the previous article, we saw that Genghis Khan entrusted a caravan to Bukhara, filled with valuable gifts, intending to present these gifts to Sultan Muhammad Khwarezmshah. This caravan entered Bukhara and then went to the court of Sultan Muhammad. Members of this caravan presented the gifts to the king and also read Genghis Khan's letter to him. In this letter, Genghis Khan was seeking peace and stated that he regarded Sultan Muhammad Khwarezmshah as his own son. However, Sultan Muhammad Khwarezmshah did not like this wording because typically in the courts of the Khwarezmshahs, the term son was used for those who were obedient and subordinate to the king and usually paid taxes. In the continuation of the letter that Genghis Khan had sent to Sultan Muhammad, the tone of the letter became more threatening, and it was written that the Khwarezmshahs better know their limits from now on, as neither we will come to those regions again nor will the Khwarezmshahs venture out of their own borders. Sultan Muhammad invited one of the members of the caravan named Mahmud Yalavak to a dinner party and asked him to dine together. During the meal, Sultan Muhammad requested Mahmud Yalavak to explain about Genghis Khan and who he and the Mongols are. He told Mahmud that they are both Muslims and of the same heritage. He told him that since we are close to each other, guide me in this matter. Mahmud began to provide detailed explanations to Sultan Muhammad about Genghis Khan and the Mongol people. The king's aides were noting down every word Mahmud Yalavak was saying, but he did not mention the number of soldiers in the Mongol army at all. He said that the Mongols stand like the edges of smoke in the darkness of night against the Khwarezmshah's forces. The Mongol caravan bid farewell to the Khwarezmshahs and returned towards the Mongol people and Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan was entering the 6th decade of his life, and, upon the request of his first wife, Bort, he decided to choose a successor for himself. He selected his third son, Ugadai, as his successor. Due to the fear that his two older brothers, Joshi and Shagatai, might harm Ugadai, Genghis Khan appointed his two elder sons as rulers of more distant territories. The Mongols lived in tents and occupied arid lands. In winter, the snow and storms were so intense that agricultural lands yielded no produce, leading them to face food crises continually. They had brought some food supplies from China, but those were also running out, leaving them in a state of severe hunger. Genghis Khan attempted to address this issue, and thus he decided to seek assistance from Iran. For this purpose, he dispatched the spoils he had gained from the war with China towards Iran to receive food supplies in return. He sent a caravan of 450 people towards Khwarezm for this task. This caravan entered the city of Otrar, and its members displayed valuable and precious goods to the public. The people of Otrar had gathered to witness this caravan spectacle. The members of this caravan had also brought gifts directly for Inalchuk, the ruler of Otrar at the time. Inalchuk sent a letter to Sultan Muhammad, who was in Samarkand. In this letter, he stated that a caravan has arrived here consisting of Mongol spies who are behaving disrespectfully towards the people and displaying their valuable goods to the public. When Sultan Muhammad received this message, he became extremely furious and ordered for all members of the caravan to be arrested, executed, and their belongings confiscated, then sent to Bukhara. Among the members of this caravan, only one caravan leader survived and quickly reached Genghis Khan to deliver the news. Upon hearing this news, Genghis Khan formed a group of 3 individuals and sent another message to Sultan Muhammad. He requested that Inalchuk should surrender himself as soon as possible and that punishment be carried out for those responsible for the killings. These 3 individuals prepared themselves and went to the court of Sultan Muhammad Khwarazmshah. The main individual was supposed to read the letter, and the other 2 were his companions. The tone of the letter was very sharp and aggressive. It stated that if there was resistance to surrendering Inalchuk, the Khwarazmshah's forces should be ready to face the Mongol army and the javelins of the Tatars. This harsh tone of the letter made Sultan Muhammad contemplate, but his courtiers did not think much of it and became very angry. They said that anyone who speaks to Sultan Muhammad in this manner should meet his doom. They killed the person who read the letter, beat the 2 companions, seized their horses as spoils, and expelled them from Khwarazm's borders on foot. This news also reached Genghis Khan, and he decided to finally avenge the slain individuals. Genghis Khan gathered all of his companions in an open courtyard and addressed them with a speech. Raising his hands to the sky, Genghis Khan exclaimed, "O eternal sky, you grant salvation to the righteous and bring punishment upon the wrongdoers." He then turned to his companions and said, "In that land, Iran, there is neither freezing cold nor storms, nor chilly weather, the climate there is always summery. There, sweet melons, grapes, and cotton flourish, and their pastures yield grass 3 times a year. Is it appropriate for such a land to be ruled by a tyrant like this? We will take their cultivated fields, level their cities to the ground, and captivate their daughters." The next day, the assembly of Khan's council was convened once again, and all the nobles were invited. Their objective was to devise a plan for how to conquer Iran. Following Genghis Khan's orders, a letter was written for Sultan Muhammad. It was handed over to his Grand Vizier, Yeluchutsai, who then passed it to one of his soldiers and said, "Go to Sultan Muhammad with 300 armed riders. If a conflict arises there, fight back right at that moment." With 300 mounted soldiers and a letter, they went to the court of Sultan Muhammad and read the letter to him in a very aggressive tone. Sultan Muhammad considered himself as Alexander the Great, and believed he would never face defeat. He couldn't fathom that he was about to engage in a war against the Mongols. The Mongols withdrew from that region, and Sultan Muhammad Khwarazmshah quickly ordered the construction of strong towers and walls around Samarkand to ensure the city's defenses in case it came under siege. He also commanded the digging of trenches all around the city to bolster resistance against the Mongols. Genghis Khan also dispatched Joshi and Chagatai with 3,000 Mongol soldiers towards Otrar. Their mission was to conquer Otrar, as their primary goal was to capture Inalchuk and bring him to Genghis Khan for his actions to be appropriately dealt with. They managed to conquer and besiege the city, and the citizens of Otrar requested protection from the Mongols, surrendering the city in return. Upon not receiving news of Inalchuk, the Mongols expelled all men and women from the city. The men were decapitated, while the women were taken as captives and placed under the control of their soldiers. The next city was Kojand. This time, Genghis Khan and his soldiers marched with 80,000 mounted warriors, traversed through the deserts, and approached the vicinity of the city walls. Unlike Otrar, the situation in Kojand was different. There was a valiant commander named Taimur Malik who was fiercely resisting and proved to be an exceptionally skilled fighter. Taimur Malik and the others in Kojand continued their resistance, but their strength was no longer a match for the Mongols. he and his followers left the city to set up an ambush on the opposite side, hoping to engage the Mongols in battles. In Khojan, like Otrar, the religious leaders requested the Mongol forces not to kill them. Genghis Khan accepted this request, but this time he spared the men. Instead, he conscripted them as laborers and used them to construct a dam on the Sirdarya River. The Mongols remained in Khojan for some time, but the situation wasn't peaceful. Taimur Malik and his companions continued to harass the Mongols from nearby, occasionally launching attacks. Ultimately, intense confrontations erupted between Taimur Malik and the Mongols outside the city. Despite the distance between them, they engaged in skirmishes from time to time. The victors of these clashes were likely Chinese engineers who had devised catapults capable of striking the enemy from considerable distances. These engineers had designed weapons that could eliminate opponents from far away. In the end, due to the loss of a considerable number of his followers, Taimur Malik retreated. Consequently, Khojan fell as well. After the fall of Khojan, Genghis Khan fulfilled his promise to his companions by setting Otrar on fire. He had vowed that wherever they conquered, they would annihilate everything and set the city ablaze. Following the capture of these two cities, Genghis Khan and his companions were driven by the allure of capturing Samarkand and Bukhara. They approached Bukhara, a city that initially seemed to be one of the most challenging for Genghis Khan, but it eventually turned into a simple and attainable target. Bukhara fell into the hands of Genghis Khan and his companions without any significant resistance. This outcome was largely due to the Muslim individuals within Genghis Khan's army, who were originally from Bukhara. These individuals engaged in discussions with the Bukharan authorities and offered them a deal. In exchange for sparing their lives, they would open the city gates to the Mongol forces. Accompanied by his younger son, Tolui, Genghis Khan entered Bukhara. The city was prosperous, and food was abundant. Genghis Khan ordered the granaries to be opened so they could sustain themselves with the available food supplies. They also utilized the city's resources to feed their horses, promoting a rejuvenation of their strength. They stayed in Bukhara for several days and requested the locals to sing for them. They would light fires during the night and engage in celebrations and merriment. The people of Bukhara also sang mournful songs about the Mongols, which the Mongols found enjoyable. When Genghis Khan asked his translator to explain the context of their songs, the translator informed him that those were tearful songs expressing their grief, as their kingdom had been lost. Genghis Khan replied that he enjoyed the songs regardless of whether they were weeping, as he found pleasure in the melodies. Genghis Khan didn't necessarily put everyone to death, instead, he utilized those who could serve his purpose and kept them alive. He would take these individuals to Mongol territories and make use of them in his court. Genghis Khan spent several days in Bukhara and eventually left. Upon his departure, he appointed a man named Tai Bahadur as the new governor of Bukhara. After a few days, turmoil erupted within the city, driven by around 400 individuals from Bukhara who couldn't bear the conditions any longer. They sought to bring destruction upon the Mongols' rule. They climbed to the rooftops of houses and hurled stones at the Mongol soldiers. They engaged in confrontations with the Mongols in the streets using their swords and any available weapons. These clashes continued for 6 days, and after that, the Mongols managed to fully control the city of Bukhara. They decapitated the 400 individuals who had been causing the unrest. Following this, Tai Bahadur expelled all the men and women from Bukhara, repeating the same pattern that they had followed with other cities. The situation in Bukhara mirrored what had transpired in the other conquered territories. In the spring of 1220 AD, Genghis Khan along with Mongol forces arrived in Samarkand. Sultan Muhammad had already left Samarkand and was residing in the surrounding plains. The Mongols managed to besiege Samarkand and were prepared for an attack. However, Samarkand was a powerful city with strong fortifications and numerous trenches. These trenches were filled with water to make it harder for the Mongol forces to access the city. The military forces in Samarkand were not experienced, and their military commander, Turkotama, lacked significant power. Eventually, they were able to breach the city gates, leading to the first clashes between the forces of Samarkand and the Mongols. These clashes continued for several days outside the city walls. Inside Samarkand, new problems arose. The influential and powerful figures of the city, including the religious leaders, started a rebellion. They wanted to open the city gates to the Mongols and obtain a guarantee of safety. They were concerned for their lives and properties, fearing that the arrival of the Mongols might lead to the destruction of their businesses and livelihoods. The city gates were opened, and Samarkand fell into the hands of the Mongol forces. Turkotama commanded around 30,000 soldiers, but he realized that this resistance was futile. Therefore, he surrendered and lost his life, and many of his followers were decapitated. The Mongols then completely evacuated men and women from the city. The men who were skilled craftsmen were sent to Mongol territories to work, while the rest were decapitated, and the women were taken into captivity. Only traders, religious leaders, and merchants could continue their normal lives in Samarkand. Among them was a figure named Albar Khan, another military commander of Samarkand. Albar Khan and his followers were lurking around the city, occasionally launching attacks similar to Genghis Khan's tactics, making the situation difficult for him in Samarkand. His goal was to reach Sultan Jalaluddin Khwarazmshah. He knew that Sultan Jalaluddin would stand strong against the Mongols, like an unyielding fortress. Sultan Muhammad, on the other hand, was beyond the Amudarya River, waiting for Inalchuk to come to his aid with a large army and prevent the Mongols from conquering Great Khorasan together. Contrary to the king's expectations, Inalchuk arrived before Sultan Muhammad with only 200 horsemen, severely injured, and carrying his broken sword and shield. He informed Sultan Muhammad that resisting the Mongols was not possible. After hearing this news, Sultan Muhammad left the region and went to Nishapur. During that time, Jalaluddin was in Nishapur and had been informed that the Mongol forces were planning to apprehend him there, making Nishapur not a safe place. Finally, Kazvin, Ray, and Zanjan also fell into the hands of the Mongols. Sultan Muhammad found himself besieged by the Mongols in the Daulatabad plain of Hamadan. However, the Iranian forces outnumbered the Mongols and managed to halt their advance in Hamadan. Fearing for his life, Sultan Muhammad fled the area, reaching Armol while disguised in simple clothing. He realized he couldn't resist any longer. The Mongols, in their relentless conquest, spared no living beings, be they humans, animals, or various creatures. They killed dogs and cats, cows and sheep, and even humans. They ravaged the cities they occupied and set them ablaze. After a while, Sultan Muhammad felt that Armol was no longer safe for him. He decided to seek refuge on the island of Arbaz-Kun in the Caspian Sea. Presently, this island no longer exists, and researchers speculate that due to sea level changes, it might have become part of the Caspian coastline. Sultan Muhammad, accompanied by his son Jalaluddin, sought refuge on this island. After witnessing his son's valor, he adorned him with an ornamented sword and declared that from now on, Jalaluddin was his successor. Jalaluddin, in his father's presence, vowed to stand against the Mongols until his last breath and fight them. He then bid farewell to his father and left to continue his own battles. Tamer Malik was tasked with returning Sultan Muhammad from Arbaskoon Island to Amala within 15 days. However, when Tamer Malik and his companions reached the island, they encountered the lifeless body of Sultan Muhammad. They buried Sultan Muhammad on that very island and then departed. It was never precisely determined what happened to Tamer Malik afterward. Some claim he spent a period wandering in the deserts of Arabia, then went to India and returned to Iran. He purportedly disguised himself as a humble Sufi beggar and went to his residence in Khojan, but there he was recognized by the Mongol forces. He was captured and subsequently executed by the Mongols. After establishing full control over Transoxiana, Genghis Khan intended to move towards Gorgan with his 3 sons, Joshi, Chagatai, and Ogadai. He aimed to capture the city of Gorgan as it was the only city in the region that had not yet been attacked by the Mongols. However, the capture of Gorgan was not Genghis Khan's sole objective. There was another individual present in the city whom Genghis Khan was eager to meet, Turkan Khatun, the mother of Sultan Muhammad. Upon reaching the vicinity of Gorgan, Genghis Khan desired to firmly plant his last spear in the soil of Iran. If you enjoyed this video, do not forget to like it, and share it with your friends. Do not hesitate to provide your view regarding this video by putting your comments below. Your comments would help us to improve our work, and also, they help us to take your views into account for the future topics that we select. Furthermore, you can subscribe to our channel to become aware of our new videos.